it's such a treat to see you. Thank you for doing this.
Oh my God. I wish I was in Michigan seeing you, but I mean.
Well, yes, one of these days. You look exactly the same. You could just be like walking into my class. You look exactly the same.
Hi.
Oh, hello.
Hi.
Is it funny? Like, I feel like even though I haven't seen either of you in so long, I feel like you both look exactly the same as I picture you in my mind all these years later.
The same, completely.
And ironically, Nick, I think
on Instagram, so.
Well, that, but I also think you had blonde hair when we were in college at one point too, maybe.
Well, different colors, yeah, I'm sure.
Soup switcher from gracefully fair. Soup switcher, say bye bye to bread. If gluten's been a bitch, then ditch her with soup switcher.
Terri.
Hi, it's so great to see you both.
So good to see you.
Amazing. You know, I'm here in Michigan and it's really humid and we had some thunderstorms and people lost power. So I hope mine holds up.
I do too.
I miss that. I don't necessarily miss the humidity, but I do, growing up in Michigan, I do miss those like summertime thunderstorms that are just completely non-existent in California. Not so nice.
Well, today there was one that just came out of nowhere and it was like one of those great summer rains that kind of cleans everything away. It was great. Yeah.
So nice. No, I had that in New York. I had a thunderstorm and me and my dad were sitting outside and I was like, this is so odd. I'm like, should we go in? He's like, no, let's just enjoy it. I'm like, inside? He's like, no, we'll sit outside and watch the thunder. I'm like, okay.
Do either of you ever get back to Michigan? Do you have family here ever? Nick, do you?
My dad still lives there, but not all that much. My mom and my brother live in Idaho now. My brother moved to Boise, Idaho years ago, and then he had kids. My mom, it's funny, my mom was retired. She retired the year that I was a freshman in college. So she's been retired for a long time. She had nothing to do in Michigan, so she basically just moved where he was. And so I'd love to. I feel like the last time I was there, I think it was when I was working at Amazon and we shot a pilot there. It was in Detroit, and I hadn't been in Detroit in ages, and I was just so kind of marveled by how much it had changed.
It's really
We almost went. I mean, we almost had our full trip booked, and I forget what happened, but we were super excited. I was so excited.
That's right.
It was a couple years ago. I went back through these emails and then, realized we had kind of left that dangling. We'll have to see why you didn't come. I think one of you got busy with something.
I'm happy to do it, but I feel like Nick is way more successful in the TV realm than I am, especially with White Lotus right now, which I'm so sad it's over. It was so good, Nick. It was so good.
Nick, it's the best TV I've seen in so long. I'm just talking about it to everybody. And congratulations, man. What a great show.
Is it like, so I have a question about it. Like, you're doing a second season. I saw that. Could we ask questions? Like, is it happening at a different hotel? Yeah. Whole new cast?
Pretty much. I mean, I think like for sure, and it's interesting because, it all came together so quickly because HBO, like most places, everything got shut down. So there was a real deficiency on their schedules for this year. And, obviously, like people aren't necessarily designing unless you're doing like a multi-camera sitcom, like people aren't really designing television shows to be very, isolated or like, condensed to like one location. So, they were talking to a few different people, and the creator of the show, I was an executive at HBO for a long time, and I developed and oversaw his show when I was there. And he always, when I was doing comedy at Amazon, we always kind of talked about doing not the White Lotus, but we were going to do the honeymoon couple, and it was going to follow them to different hotels. And then just kind of like never came to fruition. And so when HBO asks if he had any kind of, like low footprint, can kind of be done in a bubble, he just kind of always thought about this and, ultimately kind of, put it together. And and we had to, he like wrote all the scripts within like a month. And then like we started shooting mid-October, and we had to be out by Christmas just because the hotel was like reopening, and we had to like leave. So it was very, very quick. But to answer your question, like it was always kind of designed just to, quite frankly, be a one-off, just to help with some programming needs. But when we were making it, you know, the nice thing about it was we were always kind of talking like, oh, like if it popped in some way, like it's almost kind of a franchise in itself. Like it's not a franchise in the sense of something like Marvel or DC comic oriented, but like, you know, having something kind of like set at this hotel where it's kind of the lead character in a way, and you can just kind of like, you know, transfer that to Europe or transfer it to Japan or transfer it to South America. Like, you know, like it's such a kind of like easy sell in a way. So yeah, so we always were talking about that. But yeah, I mean, I think what we're focusing on for the second season is probably Europe. You know, we're looking at France, we're looking at Italy. I feel like it'll probably be somewhere around there. I mean, who knows? There might be, you know, something that comes out of the woodwork that's great. But
if you need anyone to cook you soup while you're on set, I'm
exactly.
happy to fly out.
He's vegan, like, yeah.
Organic, like I'm happy to fly out and just keep you company, like whisper sweet nothings in your ear just to move things along. Happy to do it. It was fantastic. It was, everybody in it was so good.
Yeah.
And it just was so good. I mean, and it's funny because the creator of the show, you know, I recognize him from Survivor too. Like he's in like a lot of reality television shows. I don't know if people know that too, which I am like, I feel like I know him.
Yeah.
Like, so it's so cool. I mean, he's in so many things, and did he write Enlightened too?
Yeah.
Yes, that's what we worked on the first time.
Yeah.
So he created that show. That's how we met. But yeah, I mean, he's really prolific. I mean, on one end, he's, you know, I think on the TV side, he's a little bit more known for, you know, some of these more kind of auteur feeling prestige television. But then like on the flip side, like, you know, he wrote School of Rock, you know.
That's my favorite movie.
Yeah.
I adore Mike White.
He's this guy. He wrote Nacho Libre, you know, so like, you know, so it's interesting, you know, he's, you know, he kind of like floats like both spectrums, but yeah, he's just like a lover of reality TV. When we were shooting the first season of Enlightened, that's where I don't know if it was I think it was the second season maybe because he was on The Amazing Race twice, and he was on both times with his father. And I think they were kind of doing a season where it was like, oh, like a reunion of like fan favorites or something. And so we were in post-production on the first season, and he got the opportunity, and he was just like, basically stop post-production and go do it. And we ended up like letting him do it. But yeah, he's very into that. I mean, I remember when I was in college, I was so obsessed with wanting to be on Survivor. That's when Survivor came out.
Yeah.
The first season. And I remember I was a little late to the game, but I feel like I got into it because I think I was in summer school. Like, so it was me and my friend. And I think I got into it like, you know, the last 10 episodes, and then I got really into it. And then the next season was like it was the season with Elizabeth Hasselbeck. Like,
oh yeah,
it was the Australian Outback, and I was so obsessed with it. I don't know, in my mind I was like,
she like made shoes back then too, I feel like, if I recall, because I remember really being into it in college. I actually in my early 30s applied for Amazing Race with an ex-boyfriend of mine from college, and he got called. And so when he called me to be like, oh my God, I got a call from CBS. I'm like, oh my God, are we going to be on Amazing Race? He was like, no, they asked me and they want me to choose a different partner. And I'm like, why would you call me to tell me that? This is why we're not together. But yeah, so going back to school, I mean, you know, so just for everybody who's watching, and most likely just my mom and dad, but
it's been a long time.
I know your whole family from that documentary you made.
You both know them.
Yeah.
So me and Nick actually met we became friends in our last class with Terri, our senior year of college. Terri was our professor, but Terri, I think I had you for multiple classes throughout college. And then Nick and I lived together when we moved out. We lived together for a long time, I feel like, out here. And how long did we live together? It just seems like a long time ago. God.
We lived together twice. Like I was already out here for a few months, and then we lived together, and then you lived by yourself. I lived with my friend, and then we ended up living together again when I got my first dog.
Oh yeah, Butters.
Yeah.
And so we became friends in the TV class, which was the first year that you actually did that class, because I remember it was like I had a fight to get in because it was named something else and the curriculum was different, where we did like a cooking show like the semester before. Right. And then when it became a TV writing class that we got to do, I was like, Terri, I need to be in this class. Like, this is what I want to do. And like, you helped me get in. Otherwise they said no. And then when Nick and I lived out in LA together, I started right away at a talent agency, and I was miserable. I was like coming home crying every day. You're like, like I remember you being like, it's fine. And then you started at a talent agency and you like loved it. And I was so mad that you didn't have the same experience that I did, but like you came home every day, like you loved everything about who you were meeting, what you were doing. And I was coming home like, I can't do this anymore. And that's basically what happened. But to get back to college, I remember knowing after seeing the lecture with John Rich that I wanted to direct television. That was it for me. Like I saw him lecture, and I really, really wanted to direct. And so, that's where my path was. Nick, did you know what you wanted to do when you were at school?
I don't know. I mean, clearly in high school, I was like, such a cinephile, and like I was always having Oscar parties, or like I was very, I knew I wanted to get into that. And then when we got into college, I don't know, like I think, and I'm sure, like especially the film and video studies department, it's probably evolved so much, especially with how easy it is to shoot things, and like there's just so much more, I think, accessibility just to the business in general, that I think when we were there, it was so, I don't know, it was so focused on writing or directing or creating, that's probably what I thought. It's funny, like, creative criticism and feedback. And I feel like you were the one who was like, oh, like maybe you would be, good in development, or you brought that concept up. And I didn't even really know what that meant. Like I just kind of like I didn't realize, what a development executive is, or any of that kind of stuff, quite frankly. So I feel like after that, it gave me a little bit of something to be like, oh, like maybe, I don't know, like maybe I should just kind of like keep that in mind as I try to figure out what these next steps are. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, honestly, like I think I came out and I just was like jobless for the summer. I was like, working at this retail store, and like I was interning for free. And you had already been working at the talent agency. And so like I didn't get hired at the talent agency I worked at until like Thanksgiving. And I think I was just so like, oh my God, thank God. Like it's like, oh, thank God, like I have a job. And then I do think like once I was there, like at agencies, it's just always like luck of the draw of who you work for. Are they good mentors? Are they not? All that kind of stuff. And I think I like lucked out, like working for people who were good mentors. I mean, my boss at the talent agency, ultimately years later left and was the president of HBO, so like all of these things kind of like come full circle. But realize like being a development executive, there was something kind of like one foot in being a creative, but also, like having office hours, like having like a job on, I don't know, it's a really long-winded way of answering that. But no, I mean, it was Terri who had mentioned it, that it was the thing that just kind of put that concept in my head. And, and then I just kind of learned exactly what that was once I got to Los Angeles.
it's funny that you said that, because Terri said one thing to me that plays over into my career now. But Terri, and then I'm going to ask you this, because I don't know if you realize, like, you're teaching all these kids, like it has such an impact down the line. And so I wonder if you ever, I hope you hear it often, but we got to direct those sitcoms, like our senior thesis or whatever it was. And I was so anal about it. Like I even went in the night before and like blocked everything with Post-its. And I didn't even know that you did that. Like I didn't even know we marked like the floor, which we do for sitcom television. We mark the cameras and all that stuff, but I didn't know that back then. But I was so anal about writing everything out and making sure I had all these shots and this and that. So by the time that we got into this studio, Argus, which was like an old TV news studio, I was calling the shots what I had written down, and you pulled me aside and you said, Tracy, look up at the monitors. Just take a moment and look up at the monitors. And that's what I do for a living. Like I am a video switcher. I have to look at the monitors. As many notes as I take, you never know what's going to happen. You don't know if someone's going to give a good facial reaction or the joke is going to change or whatever. And it's something that like, I hear my 20-year-old self being like, oh, okay. Like listen to Terri, like it still plays into my career.
Well, I'm on your shoulder, like a little angel.
Yes. Yes. But as a professor, like when you're teaching, like, you're going into these classes with all these students. I mean, like can you see the ones that like really want it and like really want to do it, or like are like just there because it's like a fun class? Like, how do you,
well, it's a really good question. And that is exactly, when you were saying that is exactly that has been the joy of my career. Your success is so amazing to me, and I'm so happy, and congratulations to both of you. It's amazing to me. Because my role is to facilitate that, whatever people want to do and where they want to go, and it changes. But success to me is so many different things. It's just living a life that you enjoy and that you feel fulfilled by. So I try to think that everyone who comes into my classes, and I'm going to start next week again, which may be my last semester. We'll see. I don't know. I'm getting close to retirement age, but everyone who's in that room, is going to have a life that is the potential to be whatever, and they don't know necessarily what it's going to be. So, even though the department, Nick was saying this, it has changed, and equipment has gotten so much better and so much easier to make things look good. It used to be that you really had to light things carefully to make it look good. And, you guys are talking about Argus and, how we were doing multi-camera shows and stuff. It was really a different time in some ways, and not that long ago, really, when you think about it. So, I'm getting off topic, but I think everybody has the potential to be something. And I have students who are successful, and I taught even before, years before you guys were my students. I was watching the Emmy Awards a couple of years ago, and I had lost touch with this person, but one of the people who actually won the Emmy was Harry Bradbeer, who directs Fleabag. And I was like, wow. Oh my God, that's Harry. Like he was one of my first semesters that I was teaching, and I've been back in touch with him, but like, wow, I never thought that's what he would go on and do necessarily. And he has a really interesting path. He left school and went back to London, et cetera, et cetera. But, I'm so tickled when people succeed. And, I don't know what it is that I'm necessarily going to say or teach them that's going to resonate with them and that will be part of their path. It's different for different people. And, again, there's, like I said, success is so many different things. Some of my students have become really well-known scholars, and, others have become like you two, working in the Hollywood in the industry. And it's just all over the map. But your class, though, when I think about it, there's so many people in your class, and in that class that we had together are really successful. Like I think about Shiana Mix. We were talking about her before, Tracy, before Nick, you joined us. She's like a really high executive for content at Bravo. And she went into reality TV and really worked her way up through really hard work and a lot of talent. Joaquin Elizondo, he's an editor. Joaquin, you know, I'll never forget. I'm from Costa Rica.
Oh my God, yes.
Anyway, he does this great thing. He's a, editor, and he does a really cool thing called the Hollywood Mentor, where he mentors a lot of young editors. Zach Arnold, you might remember. I don't know if you remember him, but he is also a really big editor in Hollywood. So different people have gone to different, places in their lives. And I guess I just don't know where that's going to be. And I always tell students, especially in the intro class, to keep an open mind, take it all in, because they don't know what part of it's going to apply to them. Can I show my dusty nuggets though? Since
yes.
We're at school. So I'm cleaning up my office big time. I'm a hoarder. So I have all kinds of stuff that's, from the 90s and before. So I found these things when I was going through a drawer. This is your, Tracy,
oh my God.
reflection paper about, we made you, Bambi and I made you do, and here's yours, Nick.
Oh my God.
These were your self-assessment papers for the class we had together. And they're just hilarious. I mean, I won't embarrass you with them, but I had saved them, and I also have Shiana's, which
I love that.
I must have them all in there somewhere. Although I have started to throw stuff out, and I kept these because I knew that we were going to be talking. I also have copies of these scripts, My Life at Great, and then here's Wiser Buds. So,
oh my God.
I have my notes and the scripts to you guys. It's hysterical.
I love that class. It's so weird because I came into film production in college late. Nick, did you always major in film in college?
Yeah.
Really? I did, because I first started in communications, then I did dramatic writing, and then for dramatic writing, you had to take the production 101 or whatever it was. And that was my first class with you, Terry. And it was like a spring semester.
Mm-hmm, I remember.
And that was it. I was like, I'm doing this. And you're right. We had to rent out. I'm so curious. Nick, we have to go back. I'm so curious how it works out. But we had to rent out lighting equipment, or we had to rent out film equipment where you had to change the film in the bag. And then our editing rooms, we worked off of Avids.
Yeah.
Final Cut was transitioning into the editing bays in Michigan, but we were working off Avids, and those things, man, not fun.
I feel like I was a little hip to the trend, because I feel like maybe there was an actual digital video class. I just can't remember. I just remember somewhere I had to do and this was when it was the little it was digital video, but it was still kind of a camcorder. Mm-hmm. And then independent studies where I would I was able to kind of make these mockumentaries or whatever, and I just kept going to the digital video thing. So oh my God, it was so much easier, and I was specifically that was when Best of Show and some of those things were just happening. So it was before The Office, and I think before the trend really kind of became these kind of documentary style comedy series. But I specifically, I just remember doing mockumentaries, because I don't know, you were probably in some of them, Tracy, but I feel it was you didn't have to script it, and you could kind of just riff.
You were good at them.
And
you
then
were really good at them.
Ultimately they didn't look great. It was fine, because it was kind of a part of the vibe. And then and it was just the editing was so much easier. I can't remember what we would have been editing. I still had to come into a bay. It clearly wasn't the Avid. I just can't remember what that system was at the time, but
you were probably shooting on high 8 video, your little tapes, and then
exactly
that was a digital editing of some kind.
It was, because you had to black out the tape. Do you remember you had to press record, black out the whole tape, and then rewind, and then oh my God.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah.
I actually did a documentary. Was that a different?
You did an independent study, I think, with me, and you did that documentary on your family.
Yeah.
That's why I feel like I know your whole family, the crazy family. It was almost like Nick was describing kind of a
mockumentary,
a comedy verite sort of documentary of your family.
So like it was about my mom and like they were young. So my sister must have been like 20, 21. My brother was like 15 and I was interviewing them about Cuba and I'd be like, who's Castro? And my sister would be like, it's my granddad. And I'm like, come on. Like,
That's so funny.
but I remember doing that. And I actually I remember doing that and thinking if I ever got into something of my own, this is what I wanted to do because I found it so interesting. I learned so much about my mom and I loved the documentary of putting the puzzle together. I love that so much. And I remember out of college, I don't know, Nick, if I was living with you at the time, but I remember out of college, Terri, emailed me and you said, I think you should submit it to festivals. And I got into the San Francisco Film Festival and I went out and my family flew out and my mom, because we got in, like made it like, she was famous and rented like a hotel at the Ritz Carlton. Like it was like this huge to do, went to the Castro Theater, had all the stuff. And in the documentary, and I didn't know this because I did it in college. And I'm sure, Nick, you know this about music and whatever. I put like songs from the Beatles in the documentary. So it's at the film festival. We're going around San Francisco. It's screening at different theaters. And the one question I always got was like, how did you get the rights to Here Comes the Sun? I'm like, what? I never like had the rights. I had no idea you had to like do that. But
yeah, we weren't so good about teaching that because everyone considers that when you're doing it for school, it's sort of fair use. But then when it goes beyond school like that, yeah.
Do they have like a sitcom writing class now at Michigan?
They do, yeah. Mm-hmm. Actually, 2 levels. One is a spec class and one is a pilot's class.
That would have been amazing.
I ask you guys if you ever thought when you were students that you'd be where you are now. Like, did you ever imagine that? Because that story of like you're writing on Julia Louis-Dreyfus and then you're working with her, like, did you ever imagine
it? For me, it was surreal. I mean, I sometimes you forget, but then you also become a little bit desensitized, like I've worked on so many sitcoms at this point, and I've worked on fantastic sitcoms like Big Bang Theory and 2.5 Men and Old Christine, which was one of my favorites, and Mike and Mom, like all these wonderful things. But like when you're in it, you kind of become desensitized. So you have to sometimes take a moment and be like, holy shit, like I was part of this. This was really freaking cool. And you have to do that, because but like when you're in it, when you're in the thick of it and you're having these 14-hour days, I'm sure, Nick, you have long days because it's single camera. You kind of like are in the mix and you forget, but then you just like take a moment and you're like, oh my God, this is really amazing. And even to say, even the beginning, like, Nick and I, in the beginning of our careers, we lived together and we were struggling to gain this success or whatever. And if you think about it then, like, Nick, you probably go to the Oscars and you were so serious about your Oscar parties when we lived together. It's like no one was allowed to talk. You had to dress up. Like you had to have your votes in. And like now, like, yeah, I would ask the same thing to Nick too. I mean, like, I don't think I would have worked with some of the people. I never thought that, but part of me hoped I would. Part of me hoped that I would have had a career like I've had. So I'm happy with it, and I appreciate it and I'm grateful for it. But yeah, it's so weird. But I don't know, Nick, how do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, I think because I was just so kind of, whether I was obsessed with films, and which then I think in college it really transitioned into television. I really think, like, ironically, like, with the birth of like Sex and the City and some of these HBO shows that then like, really kind of turned me on to television. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think I was so kind of like in it, and I was so like I couldn't really think of like what else I would necessarily do. But kind of even to the point I made earlier with Terri mentioning like, oh, development, and like I don't know, just feeling like it didn't feel totally tangible or necessarily within grasp, that I probably thought, yeah, I'll probably do something, but like, to the degree of like where my career's gone or the people I've been involved with, or again, even just going back to HBO, I think when because I was first an executive at Warner Brothers, I was an assistant and I got promoted. We probably lived together at some point there.
Yeah.
And, you were working at Warner Brothers and, and I was doing more funny enough, I worked on the pilot of Big Bang Theory, or maybe the second one, it was shot twice. But I was doing more of these like multicams. And then again, my boss, who was my boss at the talent agency, she, became the president of HBO and she was hiring people. And then I got hired to work in series at HBO. And I feel like when I went there, it was a little like, wow, I think that was probably the moment, if anything, throughout my career where when I got to go work at HBO, that felt like, oh my God, that felt like a real achievement in a way. I don't know, it just kind of felt like, oh, you were, you made it, or you were just kind of invited to the party. I don't know, that felt like the achievement. But yeah, I don't know, it's
so weird. I mean, it's I just feel like I just remember in college wanting to do TV so much. I didn't did you? You probably did. I didn't. But I remember everyone going to Dominic's. Everybody went to Dominic's. That was everyone went with the mason jar. I never went. I never had been my entire college career because I was either writing a script for a Terry Lawson class, or working on these projects. And I was so I have to do this. I have to do this. And it was such a big part of my life because I was just, Michigan offered such an opportunity that I don't know at the time other schools were doing that, but I just felt like I wanted to take advantage of all of it. And I loved it.
When you asked that question before, when I was saying, that I think everybody has the potential to be something, so I treat everyone that way. You ask also, did I recognize in people? I mean, I of course recognize hard work and seriousness and meticulousness, that, those things you're describing, that wasn't lost on me that you work that hard and were that serious about it. So, I do see students like that and I see the hard work and the work ethic. It's when I was saying Zach Arnold, has become this editor. He grew up on a farm in Wisconsin. He's got no Hollywood connection. And yet to hear him talk about how hard he worked, and I think it's what you're both saying is that you just sort of went for what you were interested in. And, certainly there's a sense of, Nick, in your case, you met people early on who then went to different places and you were able to kind of have your career follow that a little bit. But it was you who had the skills and excelled and worked hard to get where you are. So,
and I attest to that because I did live with him in our early 20s and I was going out drinking or this and that. And you would have a stack of scripts that you would just stay home and diligently read and go through. And I would be oh, let's go out. And you were just so dedicated to your work. And I always admire that, especially now looking back, because I don't think at that time I had that much dedication, to really diving in. I just wanted to do things. I was
it's interesting because you both have said how have things changed. One of your questions was how's it changed? And I think there's always this pressure to make more specialization, because students are really hungry now for what job is it going to get them after college. And I understand that, college is expensive and people, it's a general pressure. It's not in any particular to Michigan that people are feeling that way. But I've always felt that, especially because Michigan, the program you guys were in, is an undergraduate program. And so it is the opportunity to do a lot of different things and figure out what you're interested in. If you want to go to AFI or somewhere and become a specialist, then that's what you do in a grad school or a conservatory kind of program. But so I'm always kind of holding tight to that idea that it's a good place to give people the opportunity to do a lot of different things. And I think sometimes our program, we have these writing classes you were asking about, which are great, but they sort of groom the kind of, it's a pyramid so that the people who are the best writers get to write, they're the ones that get to go on. And then there's some people that maybe are afraid to take a writing class. But like in our class, you guys weren't necessarily studying writing, but we just threw you in and said, okay, write this and make it. And I think it sometimes catches people who don't necessarily get the golden ticket to go on in writing, for example. And I've always felt that was important.
I think it's so important. I love that you gave us that opportunity.
Yeah.
Because like, for example, like the Terry Lawson class, because he was a writer for the Detroit Press or whatever.
Yeah.
I remember like going around the room and he was asking everybody their favorite movie, and everybody was saying like Goodfellas or like what, like the classics. And I said Drop Dead Gorgeous. At the time, it was my favorite movie, and he threw me out of class. Oh my God. So like when we had to write our scripts, I'm like, there's no way he's going to like anything I write, because based on solely on the fact that Drop Dead Gorgeous was my favorite movie. So like there were, and it was always like, you always felt like you weren't good enough compared to the writers that he like really focused on. And he did. He was very like, Nick, did you take a class with him ever?
Never took a class. No, not with him.
He was just, if he liked you, he liked you. If he didn't, he didn't. That was really what it was. And so you kind of just, or whatever. So the class that we took, which was the sitcom, and then you did it and then directed it or whatever, I thought that like, because it was from the beginning to the end. It was such a great opportunity to see how like we can make this thing happen. And I loved that. But I also say, and I would say this to anybody who's going to school, who's out of school, who's in this industry, you could start over at any time, and you could start over doing what you want at any time. It's not, if you're a writer and then all of a sudden you're like, shit, I want to go and be an actress, you can do it. And I'm a perfect example of that, in the sense that I've changed my career. And I was worried about going into Soup because I was like, I'm going to miss TV, but Soup has given me Soup has given me the opportunity to start writing again and to start creating again. And I'm still switching. I'm just not switching full time.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, listen, like I do think like, there was something so kind of special about that class that we took, because it was, like I remember, I think it kind of started off, like I think we wrote a cold open, and, like we each did that, and then it kind of like zeroed in, and, then we kind of put those projects together, and like, yeah, I mean, I guess technically, like even just kind of looking at like what I did, it's, it's like there was part writing, but then, which is so what happens all the time, is you can write your own stuff, but that doesn't necessarily get made, but somebody else's thing gets made, and then you go on that thing and you help write that thing, and even with the other project, I think I was in it, and then you produced it. And I really think in a way, like even like what I'm doing now, which is a bit of a kind of a composite of all these, different things I've done throughout my entire career, whether it was, just being an executive where you're in an office and, you're, buying the projects and you're developing them and you're having a say as to what gets greenlit, to now being more of a producer where you're really, kind of putting some of this stuff together and being, much more like on the ground, like in a way, like, the past 2 years has been so eye-opening to me just from a production standpoint, just because you would think like, oh, like I've been working in TV forever, you should just, like I know production like the back of my hand, and it's totally not the case. Like, I mean, I know like the headlines of production, but being like sunk into like a production, the White Lotus, when we, were in a bubble and, we couldn't leave the hotel. I mean, literally, like we were at the hotel for 2 months, and, when we were able to leave, we were going home. Like that was such a great kind of, kind of case study of really kind of immersing yourself into a production and really understanding what that entails. So like, I don't know, I feel like even just, that aspect for me doing this for so long, I mean, I feel like I'm somewhat of a newbie, with regards to that. But I'm even like writing to some degree. It's like, there's this French actress who I've known forever. I developed something with her when she was at HBO, or when I was at HBO, and we just decided like, the two of us, she primarily wrote it, but like I really kind of helped her crack like 6 half-hour scripts. It'll be in like, French or primarily in French. And the idea is to, try to sell it more internationally. I mean, that's just something that I just never would have been able to have the time to do when I was an executive. And, just even who knows what happens with it, maybe it won't sell, but like it also allowed me to kind of flex a completely different side of myself creatively, which was more along the lines of being a writer in some way than, really what I would have probably like forecasted my career to have been even 5 years ago, when I was in an executive suite. So yeah, I agree. Like, I think it can kind of, take all these different roads. And especially now, I mean, now it's funny with you saying that person, like, oh, you have to direct or write or act. Like I've almost made a career of like working, with people, whether it's Mike White or Lena Dunham or, like people who have literally like done the whole thing.
Yeah.
That, it almost kind of feels like it almost, not that you have to necessarily go that way, but it almost feels like a given in a way.
Nick, what I was going to say before when you were talking, because I do remember in our class, we had everybody pitch an idea and write a cold open. And then we somehow, I don't remember how exactly, got that down to getting you guys in groups and you would work on shows in teams. And so you didn't necessarily get to work on the one you pitched. And you also didn't get to necessarily work on, the one you would have perhaps gone to if you had full choice. I think we sort of really figured out how to team people up. But I remember thinking that that you, when you said about me saying that you should somehow be in development, is that you really brought the strength of motivating that group as I remember it. And you really picked up a lot of the slack. Like you ended up writing a lot of it. And I don't know, you were really sort of, I saw you as a person who could see the bigger picture of it, and motivated people, even though it wasn't your original vision. Maybe that's why I said that to you.
Oh,
Was
maybe.
it Wiser Buds? Was it the one?
Wiser Buds, yeah.
Yeah. Well, listen, I mean, it's kind of in a way like, again, like even what I'm doing now, which isn't necessarily like running a department with, 10 people reporting to you, but I don't know. I mean, maybe there was something just kind of like in that within me, but in a way, I don't know, so much of what I've come to kind of experience, like your job becomes, or like the type of stuff you do work on, or again, like now in this phase of my career, I have a little bit more control over, oh, well, I want to do this kind of thing or this kind of thing, or like, oh, like I want to work with these 3 people who I had a really good experience with 5 years ago. But especially like when you are working at a network, even a place as great as when I worked at HBO, at the end of the day, you're still programming for the network. Like you can infuse on your sensibilities or your taste or some of the projects you would like to do there, but at the end of the day, yeah, you are kind of, it's not always about like the thing that you want to do.
Right.
And so I don't know, like, yeah, maybe in a way that's, I don't know why maybe I was able to like flip over into this a little.
Yeah, now there's sort of a logic as to who you met and where you went. And I just think that's so interesting to look back on. And as a teacher, I sometimes like see it. I can see it a little bit before the people can even see it. I don't know.
My idea got picked.
Yours did, yeah.
And we had a writer come in to like read our like first like.
It was David Pollock who wrote
Yeah.
MASH. Yeah.
He hated mine. And I got real mad.
He hated it? I don't
He
think
did
he
not
hated
like
it.
it.
He probably gave you some criticism. Like,
He gave me a lot of criticism. He didn't like it. But I remember, like, I feel like you could either write it or direct it. And I was like, nah, I'm going to do both. Like, I didn't want anyone writing it and I didn't want anyone directing it. And I think I was with, I forget, I think Maya was in my group.
I was in your group.
Maya was in my group. I think we like took it over and we were just like, we're going to do this.
Yeah. Who else? I don't know.
Nick, for people who are watching besides my mom and dad, explain the process. Like, so, when you work for HBO, you work for HBO, but like now with what you do, you essentially pitch to HBO, correct?
Yeah, I mean, pitch to HBO or elsewhere. I mean, my kind of like my situation is I have basically like a first look deal with HBO. So, I'm a non-writing, producer, and basically I need to take the stuff there first if they want to do it, and they've primarily done most everything that I brought them. That's great. If they don't, then you're kind of like free to take it everywhere else.
Do you pick who you want to work with, or do people come to you? Do you get like a lot of people coming to pitch to you?
You know what? I feel like I could. I think, and again, maybe it's kind of like what I was talking about, where I had so many years of pitches, so many years of like incoming business, which listen, that's great. That like now in this kind of new venture, I've just been much more of like, oh, like, I really got along with this person, or like, I just, I always loved this writer, but, for whatever reason, when I was an executive, like it just, we just couldn't crack it, or it just, ultimately didn't get greenlit. So I've been much more kind of focused on, just again, like the people in the past who I've worked with that I, obviously that would make sense for what I'm doing now, doing stuff with them on, or, like optioning this article or, this book, and then, trying to, bring people into that. I mean, there have been things with HBO, like when I first got the deal, they put me on a show, which was great. It was this Italian series, this filmmaker, Luca Guadagnino, and I went to Italy and produced that. And that was really amazing. The show is called We Are Who We Are. So sometimes, with my deal, if it makes sense, or if I'm free, or for whatever reason, HBO could, ask me just to kind of go on to something. So there's also that aspect of it as well.
You should have, I mean, I don't know. I just want to be a fly on the wall, but I feel like you should have one of Terri's classes pitch you ideas. And I kind of just want to see you be like, no, move along.
Well, all the knowledge I think of that you've gathered in your career about sort of what to spend your time on, I don't think students think enough about that, and maybe they shouldn't, when they're students, like the sense of what they're writing and why they're writing it.
Right. There's that, and listen, like I think especially, I mean, there is such a purity to that when you are a student, and you're just, it's whether it's, you, Tracy, doing your documentary about your family, or like, again, like I was just, kind of doing these like silly, like mockumentary things, or I don't know, like whatever. I think there's something so great about just kind of like honing in on something creatively that you're interested in, but also that you're just like energized to do. But I do think there is something, especially once you are kind of working more within the industry. And listen, like my first job being at Warner Brothers, where it was a studio, and the job was really to develop projects. And this is when it was more broadcast networks. Cable wasn't much of a thing, but, you would take it to NBC and CBS and Fox, and, like it was such a kind of interesting first step in like, oh, like, well, if you're an executive at Fox, well, I don't know, like maybe what you're looking for are the pitches that make sense toward you and what your business is, isn't necessarily going to align with whatever CBS or ABC or any of those want to do within a season. So I think that's always something interesting that I would always kind of like throw back at students. And granted, I don't think they're necessarily, in the place where they need to totally think about it as students, but that was, I think, something that, like, in hindsight, I think, whether there's like a business class or something in college that just makes you think like, yes, like you're writing it for this intent, but then also like, in a professional setting, or, if you want to then take that creativity and turn it into commerce, like where does your voice kind of align?
But when you start to leave school, there has to be some eye toward it, because that's where you're going, right?
Yeah. I there's always like, if you have to get, like, I always said, like, I always wanted to act, and but I always felt like I needed a job. And so, like, I needed a steady job to live out in Los Angeles and provide for myself. But there's always, you could get a job and you could still be creative. You could still do all those things. And so I think sometimes that, like, gets lost on people, where they're just like, well, I can't do this without, if I do this, then I'm never going to be able to write my script. I'm like, there's 24 hours in a day. You could do it. You just have to do it.
You guys know, because when you're in Michigan, you're not in LA. And so trying to go there, it's really scary. And it's really, you feel like you're just starting out at a disadvantage.
My friend Corey went to Michigan, and he was in the writing program, and he wrote one of the most beautiful writers I've ever. He actually invited me. He won a program at the University of Michigan for a short story that he wrote, and I didn't even know about it. So I went to go hear him read it, and I was like, oh my God. And then we took Terry Lawson's class together, and his script was better than everybody's. Like, it was so great. And so he doesn't live in LA, his life is in Colorado, and he actually asked me to read a script. And I did. I didn't know what to do with it. Like, I don't know what to do with movie scripts. I'm more TV. And it was really good. And so, but there's so many outlets that people don't realize, that don't live in LA or not in the know, that you could, like, literally put your scripts up, like on the Blacklist, for example. And, like, you have people reading your scripts and giving you critiques. And if it's good, they kind of like showcase you. It's to a point where my friend Jen, she wrote a comedic version of the Titanic and she put it up on, I think, the Blacklist. And then they had a reading of it, and they cast it with all celebrities. I went to the reading. It was like 400 people, so many people. It was so exciting. But I don't think people realize that that outlet is open to everyone, not just people based in New York or LA. And so, I put scripts up on there too. Like, it's such a good source for, like, wait, should I pitch this yet? Or do I need to work on it still? And so, I don't know. Those are things. Sorry.
And I would add to that. I mean, listen, like, I don't, however much longer, COVID and variants and Zoom rooms and all that. But I mean, listen, like, I was a part of, at least like 2 writers' rooms, not as a writer, but as a producer, where I'd, kind of come in and out. Like, one show, literally, like, the creator of the show, he's in he's Danish. So he's, like, based in Copenhagen. And so he was there, and some people were in New York, and some people were in LA. And you know what I mean? Like, it was just, like, I know, like, Minneapolis has for a long time been a really great kind of birthing ground for playwrights. And so I feel like I was working with playwrights who, like, whether they were still in, doing whatever residency, but, like, were in any normal situation, they would have been, limited as to what they could work on television wise, or being a part of any sort of room where, given kind of everything that's going on, and there is so many more, Zoom rooms, and people are doing, video conference so much more, it's kind of opened a door to, like, live in a place like Minneapolis, or, like, I feel like I had someone in a room, he was, in the middle of nowhere in Georgia, like, just kind of be, like, not in kind of the heart of the industry, but still be able to kind of take part, Are you, I should know this, but are you doing any TV at all right now, or just straight up soup?
Well, I was on One Day at a Time, which was
Of course, yeah.
hands down like my favorite show. So One Day at a Time is, obviously a remake of One Day at a Time, but they set it with a Cuban family, and obviously my family's Cuban, so like every episode was fantastic. So we shut down March 2020, and then we got canceled, which was such a bummer because it literally I got to sit in a room with Norman Lear and Rita Moreno, like taking notes. It was such a like, I'll never have that experience again. Like, they were so funny and so amazing. And the director, I mean, the showrunners were so inclusive. So a lot of times my job, I don't get to sit in the notes, but they really wanted the switch to be good. So I got to sit in, and it was just great. So I was still having my shop, and I was still doing that show. It got canceled, and I was asked to do a bunch of pilots during the pandemic. But as you both know, I'm sure, I don't have an immune system anymore, and I couldn't risk it. I couldn't put myself out there. And so I just talked to one of my producers to do a show in November, and I feel a little bit better about it. I'm vaccinated. I'm a little now with the Delta variant. But I just miss being on set, and I miss doing what I do, but I love cooking. I feel like, Nick, you knew this. Like, I always loved to have dinner parties. I don't know if you loved me having dinner parties in the apartment, but like, I loved having dinner parties.
I feel like I do that so much more now. It's
really?
Something kind of like, I don't know, like maybe it's just, I don't know, there's something like meditative about it. Like there's something nice about, because whenever I cook stuff, it's like from cookbooks, recipes, like I'm very kind of, like I make something that probably is going to like last for 3 days. Like there's like leftovers, but I think there's something that I really like about just like following the rules to something. These are the ingredients. Like, I don't know, like it's something kind of new that I've discovered lately. Like it maybe it was, partially because of, being quarantined and whatnot, and just trying to like an activity to do. But yeah, I don't know. There is something kind of, again, I keep thinking meditative about cooking.
Well, also like kind of like gratifying, like when you get something right and it tastes good and like somebody else is tasting it, you're like, yes, this is such a great feeling. Almost everybody I meet has like some sort of chronic illness, some sort of underlying condition, or they're not eating healthy, especially in TV, or I'm assuming movies too. It's like you're on set, you're snacking half the time. I always say, like, whenever I start a show, I have to like lose a few pounds because I know I'm going to gain a shit ton just eating what's on set. Mm-hmm. But with this whole disease, I had to change my whole lifestyle. And so, yeah, I started doing soup, and I just decided to do another TV show come November, which I'm super excited about. But I do love cooking, like I do love it. And I love when somebody comes in and it tastes good, and it makes me happy. Like when somebody's like, oh my God, this is so good. I'm like, yes.
This is the best pea soup I've ever eaten.
That's what I was having. I was having the pea soup. It's so good.
And this cookie, this is the best chocolate chip cookie I've ever eaten.
Those are vegan chocolate cookies. Thank you. Did I give you any, Nick?
What's that?
Did I give you any cookies, Nick?
Yeah, I haven't had them yet. Yeah.
Okay.
And Tracy, I have sort of a similar story. I went gluten-free about 8 years ago.
Wow. Yeah.
I was chronically sick, and I went to a homeopathic doctor who said that my body had an immune response all the time. And it's made me feel so much better.
Oh, good.
A lot of things I'm not, having symptoms of things that I was having before. So I'm right there with you. But thank you again for the food. Fantastic.
I'm so glad you're going to try it. I'm sure, like, do you have that option in Michigan? Like, I can't imagine there's many outlets.
Ann Arbor, yeah.
Gluten-free. It's getting better, but for a while when I first started doing it, I went macrobiotic for some years to get better from what was happening to me. And I had to bring my own food everywhere.
Same.
I would bring these little things with brown rice, it's like, it was pretty pathetic, but.
And has your eating habits, I mean, given every, like, is it still the same? Like, have you been able to kind of, I don't know, like incorporate stuff back in, or is it just, it's kind of like, why bother?
I incorporated alcohol back in.
I was going to ask. It's like,
I didn't drink a drop for 4 years. Like I didn't have a drink for 4 years. And as Nick knows, because he spent most of my younger years with me, I was my best self when I drank. I loved to drink and I loved to sing songs and do karaoke and yada, yada, yada. So I didn't drink for 4 years, and I started to drink again. Like I'll have a glass of wine or two and like I am trashed. Like me in college, I could have like 17 beers and be like, what are we doing next? And now I'll have like 2 glasses of wine and be like, somebody needs to carry me to bed. Like I can't do this. So I do that. I never eat gluten. Occasionally I'll have like cheese here and there, but I know that it causes so much inflammation, so that if I have it, I know that the next day, like I'll have pain everywhere in my back, like in my legs. I get really bad leg pain. So I know that like if I'm going to do it, I know what's coming next.
Yeah.
But otherwise, like, you know, I don't really do refined sugar all that much. But I'm not annoying about it. Like if I'm at a restaurant, I won't be like, you know, that's a lie. My friend, that's a lie. I am annoying because I'm allergic. I become allergic to everything because my immune system is so weak.
Mhm.
So, but I know where I could go and I know where I could eat. I'm sad that you're not working with the same actors because they were all brilliant. Like,
it's funny. Like I mean that's one of the things that Mike is the creator is trying to figure out. Like I think he gave an interview recently and we talked about this, and it's kind of a great idea where it's, you know, if there is, you know, well, there is a second season, if there's a third season, or, you know, if it basically kind of like fits into the mold of this kind of franchise idea where you can, you know, it's like third season is, I don't know, Asia somewhere, and you know, fourth season is,
it's like where you guys want to go on vacation.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But almost like maybe there's a way of like bringing people back. Like he's probably going to bring at least maybe 1 or maybe 2 characters from the previous season into the second season, but then all new people. But then we kind of talked like, you know, it could be fun if there is a third season, then maybe you bring someone from the first season, and then you bring like someone from the second season, then all new people. So it is almost kind of like, it's like my version of Marvel, you know, like of like a super, you know, where you just kind of like pluck and move them all around. But yeah, so
It was like, I just felt like the ending was like so good. It was like happy and sad, everything like kind of all at once. Like, did I want her to get back with her husband? No, like at all. But I kind of liked it because that's probably what would have happened. Like, you know what I mean? Did I love Jennifer Coolidge at the end? I mean, I loved her she was fantastic. But there were just so many things. I love that the kid ran back. Like,
yeah.
there's it was just great. Like, I loved everything about it.
The way that he was able to make it funny, but also so incisive, the commentary on wealth and tourism, it was just so fantastic. And the whole plot with Kai, the
yeah.
guy who she, you know, sort of sets up for this thing and ends up sending him to jail. He needs to come back and be really angry at her. You know? I'd love to see that.
Now, are you on set, Nick, when all this is happening? Because like I can just see you like laughing so hard at some of these things.
Yeah, I mean, like typically, like, you know, because there are different types of producers, and I'm definitely more along the lines of a creative producer. So a lot of times I find that it's like the show that I'm getting ready to shoot this fall. Like right now, I feel like I'm very, very entrenched in it because we're doing the scripts and we're, you know, like we're working so much on the creative, and then we're going to be in casting. And then like, unless if like there's a bigger issue, like I'd like to be on set, but I don't necessarily need to be there like every day. You know, then there's like a line, well, Tracy, you know, like there's line producers who that, you know, can kind of like manage that. And again, like typically the people that I've worked with, you know, they're, you know, it's Mike White or Luca Guadagnino or you know, this I'm working with Amy Seimetz, and then I'm working with Nicholas Winding Refn. Like, there are these directors who, like, you know, they have a very strong vision as to like what they do, like once they're in production. So I can always have like creative feedback if, you know, I don't know, like something's kind of going off or there are questions. But typically, like once it gets into that zone, you know, like it's, you know, it's kind of in their hands. And then I kind of come back around much more like in the post-production when we're putting episodes, you know, and the edit and all that stuff together. White Lotus was different just because I think I had mentioned this, like, you know, it was a bubble show. So like everybody, like the actors, the producers, the crew, anybody, craft service, like anybody who worked on that show lived at that hotel.
Yeah.
You know, leave. Like I got, like, I don't know, like I got there October 15th and I checked out like, I don't know, December 20th or whatever. So with that one, like, yeah, for sure. Like I was definitely like around, you know, I feel like I definitely made a point to always be around for the Jennifer Coolidge scenes. Not that I necessarily had like notes or anything. I just, you know, I mean,
not that I've seen you in many years, but I feel like you could take this or leave this. And from what I know about you, but Nick loves a good woman. Like you loved Lisa Kudrow in The Comeback, Laura Dern.
Comeback when I was at HBO.
Comeback's one of the best shows. Comeback's one of the best shows. Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And Laura Dern, like you obviously, but like you love, or like that's like when you used to make me watch The Hours, like with Nicole Kidman, and I'd be like, why? Like this is so depressing. But like you love like a great female lead that could carry a scene. Like
no, I said like you can kind of like look at like, I mean, I've worked on plenty of different types of shows, but like I feel like if you really kind of like took the thread of like, I don't know, like what the common denominator is. It's like, it feels like it always involves a woman who might be somewhat unlikable, but who's always kind of putting herself in a compromised situation. Like, again, it's like Laura Dern Enlightened or Lena Dunham Girls or Lisa Kudrow. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, you can kind of connect the dots and realize I was probably a part of it. I
think I got the most texts on the White Lotus episode when Jennifer Coolidge is like, just go, I'm a mess, get out of here, I'm terrible. And he's like, I'm still gonna fuck you. Like it is one of the best scenes. And I could just see you sitting on set being like this is gold. Like it was such a good scene. And like, how does she come out after that? Like, how does she end? Like, when the camera wraps and you're just like, all right, we're done for the day. She's like, all right, cool. I'm gonna go smoke a cigarette. What is she like? I feel like that's emotionally draining.
I mean, yeah, I mean, listen, like, I think Mike kind of, that was the only person, because they're very close friends, that he wrote the role for.
Oh, okay.
You know, so, I mean, I'm not gonna be like, oh, that's, you know, her in a nutshell. I think there are, you know, kind of as you were pointing out, you know, Terry, like there was something very kind of just kind of this the bite or the incisiveness of what it was. Like he's just such a good observer, you know, so I think in a way he kind of took like, you know, I don't know, some of the aspects of who she is and kind of put it in that character, but also like knowing, like, you know, it's like that you know, the scene of her, the first botched attempt of her trying to throw her mother's ashes, you know, like he knows he can put her in a situation like that and write something for her, you know, but like my mother told me I would never be a ballerina, and that was when I was skinny. Like that was her. You know what I mean? Like, you know, so he knows kind of like how to like let her kind of like roll with it.
Yeah.
But listen, I mean, you know, the fact of the matter is like, you know, she's just, you know, she's really, really good. She's like a pro, and, you know, especially as a comedian, like, you know, I mean, whether it's something more like this or something where, I mean, all of her Christopher Guest stuff is improvised, you know, so, you know, in a way, like, yeah, she kind of just like, okay, it's done. time to go back to, you know, hotel room, I guess. But she's great.
Well, get ready to go to the Emmys. I mean, that's just going to be, congratulations on all the awards. I know you guys are going to win.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
You never know. You can never really. I mean, I really hope, if anything, for Mike, because he's just so prolific and he deserves it. You just never know with these awards. Like
it's stupid, but it's
it
quality.
would be nice. Yeah.
Fantastic. Really fantastic.
Well, I'm so glad we did this. And I do want Terry, I will be there in a heartbeat if you want this fall
same.
like that.
All right. We'll figure it out. We'll see what happens. And I know you're both busy, so I'll email you in a while and see what we can set up.
I'll see if I'll reach out to Shiana and Maya, and maybe we'll all get together. And
Please do. That would be so fun.
it would be so much fun. Can you imagine if we got our whole class? That would be great. I mean, I only remember like 5 of us, but for the most part, I mean, that would be so fun.
Thanks again for sending that fabulous food. It was so great.
I'm so glad you tried it, and I'm so glad to see your faces. This has been great.
Too great. It's fantastic. I love the memories, and again, going through my office was really funny.
I can't even believe you still have that stuff. That's crazy.
Well, I can't either. I mean, it's almost pathological, but it's been a lot of fun to look at. So, yeah.
Well, thank you for everything
so much. Yeah, it was really great to see you both, and congrats on your successes.
Thank you.
So great.
Thank
you. Thank you for helping push us in this direction.
So happy. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Love you both.
You too. Bye, Nick. Thank you so much.
Bye.
She was a video switcher in TV at the time. Then whoops, suddenly that girl's got Lyme. Her health is back on track cause she switched up her diet. And now she's forcing all her friends to try it. Soup switcher from gracefully fed. Soup switcher, say bye bye to bread. If gluten's been a bitch then